Okay, so you should be able to see my dashboard right now. Is that right? Can you all see that? You'll see that I have kind of, everybody can see the dashboard? Yes, okay, great. So, all right, so let me just get started on this. Obviously, the first thing I want to mention here is that you should not take the existence of any specific ticker on my dashboard as being a a recommendation to buy or sell something. I just kind of follow a lot of stuff, and in fact, I probably own maybe only one or two of the tickers that are actually on my dashboard right now. I do like to follow the news, and so, for example, AMC and GME, and some of these companies have been in the news quite a bit, and so you'll see that those are on my dashboard here. And basically what we're looking at here is, as we're looking at tickers here. And so this is kind of the heat map that we have. If we have a pricing for a stock, and we're going to put it in here, we don't have necessarily have prices for foreign companies right now. So you're going to see that these are not lit up. If you want to add tickers to your dashboard, you can just put a bunch in here. So I can put in GE, or I can put in TMDR or whatever, and I can follow these companies, and we'll add them. And if you go sliding down the dashboard here, what you'll find is that there's news. Okay, we get a lot of news. And then you have SEC filings. And let me see if I can zoom this up a little bit to make it a little bit bigger. There you go. We have SEC filings. We have insider trades here. And we have some ownership transactions, and I'm on a guest account, so I can't see the ownership transactions, but you guys should all be able to see them. And really kind of what Fintel does is we really look at, we really try to dig into regulatory filings and stuff like that. So we're a little bit less newsy, but we do have news here, but it isn't really one of our specialties. What we really try to focus on are really important regulatory filings that we get from the SEC or other regulatory agencies around the world. So we've just added the Financial Conduct Authority of the UK, which is the equivalent to the SEC. We're going to be adding Canadian stocks, and so we'll be able to get Canadian insider trades and so forth. And really, the way our philosophy is that if there's something that's important and something that's going to be moving the market in a stock, they're typically going to have to disclose that news to the SEC. And so, a lot of news is just kind of fluff and noise. But if somebody files an SEC filing, then it's probably significant to them. If they don't disclose some kind of news that's significant, then they can get sued. And so that's kind of why we have, look at all these SEC filings and court filings here. So here's a filing from the UK. Let's see what company this is on. This is for AstraZeneca, which is in my stock list here. So here's a UK filing that we have for AstraZeneca that you might not have gotten if you're just looking at the US. If you have any questions, let me know. I'm just going to kind of plug through here and riff on some stuff. So we have SEC filings and Financial Conduct Authority filings from the UK in here. If a company is dual listed, then you'll see them both. You can see that Snowflake recently amended their articles of incorporation, and they had to file an 8K. An 8K basically is news that the company thinks is significant, and if they think is significant, then they have to file an 8K and report it to the SEC, which is then how we get it. So here they have reported on their financial condition, material modification to rights of security holders, and something about voting power here, and then some amendments to the Articles of Incorporation. All of these things are newsworthy, and so you should probably go read this if you're invested in Snowflake. How often is the portfolio info updated? I see that our portfolio is not updated every day, which they publish. Right. So good question. So people ask about that. We get our data from the SEC, right? So when a company makes a disclosure to the SEC, then we consider it to be kind of gold, because there's a lot of penalties for kind of lying to the SEC. We don't actually go scrub the ARC website. I know they publish their stuff daily, so we don't we don't consider that to be gospel, to be honest. So, what you're going to find is that the ownership that we have might be lagged in some cases. In fact, it will be lagged compared to what ARC publishes. But most companies don't publish their holdings on their website every day. ARC is very kind of special in that regards. So you're not going to see like the daily updates that ARC publishes, at least not right away. I mean, I can look into this and see if it's worthwhile, but we personally prefer to get the data that's reported to the SEC because we believe that to be more correct. So we'll look into that though. So this is kind of the main page, and let me, so we also have these things called alerts. So let me show you what the alerts do. If you are following a bunch of companies like these companies here, we have a number of there are a number of filings, a number of types of SEC filings that we consider to be important and newsworthy, and so we curate that list. And so that list includes 8Ks. It includes an S1, which means that an S1 is a registration statement, which means that they're going to issue more shares. There's insider trades. There's 13 Ds and Gs, which include ownership data and so forth. And so, if you are following a company and there is a important filing that we think, then you're going to get an alert. And we get alerts here on this page. Okay. And you can also get email alerts. Okay. So if you want to go manage your alerts, you can either go to this page here and click on manage your alerts, or you can go into settings and you can click on alerts here. And so let me tell you what these do. A lot of people have asked about getting alerts for any kind of company, like in the universe or in the investable universe. And so that's what we have these global alerts for. So people want to get an email anytime any company submits an S1 filing, which is a registration statement. That would be basically for an IPO. Some people want to get an alert when any company indicates an insider purchase. Some want, any insider sale. And then you can have, we have like kind of larger numbers here. And so that's what this is. This is basically the way to get an email or an alert when any company registers one of these kind of events. We also have these legacy company alerts. And we're in the middle of kind of renovating our alerting system. The legacy company alerts basically looks at the companies that you're following specifically. And it allows you, it basically fires off whenever one of these curated events happens. And so it would include an S1, an 8K, a significant insider trade, and so forth. And so, my suggestion is if you want to follow, if you're really looking at following and staying on top of companies that you're following, then you go and add them to your dashboard, and then make sure that you're subscribed to these email alerts here, and you'll get this curated list of emails that we send out whenever there's significant events. If there's one that you can unsubscribe from them on an individual basis as well here. We also have the ability to follow investors, and so for example, you can follow a company, or you could actually come down here and you can follow an institution. So for example, if you look at funds up here, these are a bunch of funds that I think are important. And Melvin Capital Management, obviously in the news lately. But these are all pretty well-known hedge funds, and so I like to kind of keep up on what they're doing. And so if I want to get an email, so for example, when Point72 Asset Management buys a new company or makes a new investment, then I would subscribe to the alerts for investors. And so here's where we can see kind of the list of investors that I'm following, and then I can subscribe or unsubscribe to those alerts. Any questions so far? Okay. The alerting is something that we spend a lot of time on, and we're going to continue to spend time on this, designing new alerts. If you guys have an alert that you're interested in getting that you don't see here, let me know, and we'll look into it. Okay. In addition to that, we have the news. So if you like the news, then we'll give you a full page on that. This is, basically shows you what's going on in your portfolio. You have basically the full set of SEC filings or Financial Conduct Authority filings from the UK. So whereas on the overview page, you saw kind of a teaser, 10 or so items. This will actually show you, the full list of recent filings that are important to you. Okay. And then there's insider trading data. So for example, when an insider in a company makes a trade, they have to disclose that to the US, to the SEC. This will show you all of the insider trades that have been made, all of the insider reports that have been made in your portfolio companies in the last, period of time. So you can see 6 minutes ago, we got a filing for Google, Ann Mather, who sold 26 shares. Not that it's significant. She had 460 shares after that sale, so not a very significant trade. You can see this person exercised and so forth. Insider trades are required to be reported within 2 days of the trade. We're basically pinging the SEC every 60 seconds, and so we think we get them pretty quick. They're going to show up here pretty quickly. And if you have an email alert, you're going to get that email alert. We're going to send the email alert pretty quickly. We know that there are sometimes frequently delays in emails, and so that's why we built this kind of real-time alerting system right here. And I don't know if you guys saw this or not, but I actually got a browser alert a couple minutes ago. And so that's one of the things that we do here is if you have your alerts page open, you'll get a browser alert whenever this thing. Code J shows up a lot, but there's no legend as to what it represents. Right here, code J. Oh, it's right. It's accompanied by a footnote describing the transaction. Okay, so what you would do, code, if you want to know, like, code J other. Okay, so I'm gonna go click through to repair therapeutics. I'm gonna have to go dig for it, right? So let's see if I can dig through. So here's the form 4 with the J. And I'm going to click on the form. I'm going to end up on the SEC site. I'm going to click on this, on the HTML. And then the J, it says accompanied by footnotes. So here's the footnotes. And so it's going to explain, it represents, so the other, these are all others. These are all, and they all have footnotes, 1, 3, 5, 6. So this one, footnote 1, represents a pro rata distribution and not a purchase or sale without additional consideration by a person. So basically this is how you find that, right? So you really kind of have to dig in. These look like they're all kind of like non-open market sales, and they all look like pro rata distributions. So that's how you kind of track that down. Is that helpful? Okay. So in terms of ownership, then we have we can look at disclosures. So this is basically most recent transactions or most recent disclosures by investors in your companies. And so you can see here that there was a filing on the 3rd, which would be today. The effective date is 12/31. So for 13F filings, if you're not aware of this, these are basically filings that a institution has to file. They have to file it 4 times a year. The due date is 45 days after the end of each calendar quarter. So the last calendar quarter was, obviously Q4 for 2020. The due date for 13F filings was February 15th. So, why is Draper Asset Management filing on the 3rd? Well, they're late. Okay. If you go back and look at these, you'll see that there's a lot of late people coming in, and that's just kind of how it is sometimes. But that's and what they do is they have to disclose their holdings as of the last day of the last quarter. So we're not actually seeing transactions here, even though it says, 1 share and a volume of 3. It doesn't mean that they made that transaction, that they bought that share on the 31st. It means that they owned that share as of that day. They could have bought that share. I'm sorry, 1,000 shares. This is 1,000 shares, not 1 share. They could have bought those 1,000 shares at any point in time during Q4. They could have bought 50,000 shares and sold 49,000 shares in Q4. It doesn't tell. We don't have the kind of the transparency or the visibility into what actually happened during the Q4. We only know the state of the situation, the state of the holdings as of the last date of the quarter. So make sure you understand that. However, you might not think that, well, that's not as useful. It's not as useful, but it's still useful, because what you get to see is we get to see, over time, who's accumulating and who's not. So when you start looking at funds flow, I don't know why I don't have this thing enabled here, but this is this is basically going to show you in your portfolio who's accumulating and who's not. So you can see that in my portfolio, there's a company, I can't tell you what it is, had 203 new owners in the last quarter. And if I sort this, I can actually see which funds are accumulating and which funds are exiting. And that's important over time. I can see that one of my companies, 30 funds sold out here, okay? And that's good information to know. What we're doing here is we're basically looking at the entire aggregate picture of the ownership of companies in my portfolio, and then showing you like an aggregate view of what they're doing. Okay. Likewise, you can do the same thing with the institutions. So I'm following all of these investors up here. Baker Brothers Advisors, Baupost, and so forth. Okay, Bridgewater Associates. And I can see that these are the transactions that they're doing. The 13G filing is different than the 13F filing in that the 13G and the 13Ds are basically required whenever any entity owns more than 5% of a stock. So basically the government's trying to track who owns large chunks of companies. And so Savvy Management has reported owning, if we click through here and we look at the detail, we can see that Savvy Management has reported owning 7.99% of listed biotechnology companies on the 3rd. They disclose this on the 3rd. With 13D and 13G filings, the deadline is about more or less 10 days or so after the change. So this would have been a pretty recent filing. There are some scenarios and some filers like Vanguard that owns, that is so big, the SEC allows them to not file within 10 days. They only have to file annually. And so you'll see that on the 14th or the 15th of February, there's a bunch of filings from Vanguard and BlackRock. That ownership could have been achieved at any point during the year, so don't take that as being the deadline for them. Okay, questions so far? I'm moving pretty quickly. I'm just trying to make sure that I can try to explain to you kind of what all this stuff means while also getting through the entire demo. Do I have a legend for all these forms? We do have, if you go looking in the chat, or I'm sorry, in the help, in the question mark down in the lower right-hand corner, and you ask about the forms, there should be a document in there that talks about all the forms that we have. The ones, at least the ones that are important. If you go up here to the top and you click on Form Browser, where'd it go? SEC forms. You're going to find out that there's hundreds of them, and we don't have them all documented yet, but we're trying to get some documentation on them. But really, there's ownership filings, which are the 13Gs and 13Ds and 13Fs, and the NPORT filings, and then there's insider trades, which are the Form 4s, and then there's news, which are the 8Ks. I'll keep going through here, and I'll show you some more of this stuff. So if I have a bunch of funds that I like, which I do, and I think are smart, they're smart money, then you might say to yourself, well, how do you find out what are the most popular stocks held by these popular funds? And that's what this kind of funds flow, this institution's fund flows tab does. Give this a second to load. But basically, it looks a lot like this kind of funds flow for the stocks up here. It combines the portfolios of those funds, and it provides me with a list of all of the stocks that are most widely held by them. This basically allows us to find out which ones are the most popular. So again, subscription required. I'm not quite sure why this is doing this, but if I want to look at the ones that are the stocks that are most popular, I can sort this here. And basically what this is saying is that this security here was owned by five, five of my funds previously. Now it's owned by two, so it declined by three. Let me sort this by owners here. So here's a company that was owned by nobody initially. None of the funds in my watch list owned this company, and now four of them do. So I should go take a look at this and see like what's going on with this company. That's kind of a way to find new investing ideas. So you can do it this way, or if you want, you can actually go to, we have this thing called a combined portfolio builder, which is basically just this exact same thing. Instead of looking at the companies in your portfolio, you can actually kind of build your own, kind of tool here. So this is kind of the same thing. Here I've selected 0.72 in starboard value, and I can see that both of them own Advanced Auto Parts, and that's no change. If I want to look at the change in owners here, I can see that On Semiconductor was owned by one of these companies in the prior quarter, and now it's owned by two companies this quarter. And so you can kind of build an interesting model around that. Okay. If you're interested in like, specific themes, we've actually built some predefined kind of combined portfolios here. So we went and we looked at all the ETFs and all the mutual funds that have emerging markets, and we do the same thing here. If we want to look and see which one is being accumulated in emerging markets, you can see that Allegro SA was owned by nobody before, and now it's owned by 10 companies. It's probably a new issue, probably had an IPO. So this company here was the most widely accumulated company in the emerging markets world. Alibaba Group, obviously we know who Alibaba is. They're also were accumulated, and so forth. So if you're interested in emerging markets and you don't know where to go, where to buy, where to get ideas, then this is a good opportunity. We have other portfolios as well. If you have a theme that you would like to see up here, let me know, and we can build it for you. So here's an ESG. Microsoft, I guess, is in the ESG world. This is basically a list of companies that are owned by ESG funds by popularity. I'm a little surprised that some of these companies are in here, but Quest Diagnostics was accumulated, and so forth. Okay, questions about this? Let's get back to the dashboard. Let's see. We have some stock screens here. So these are some screens that I've created that you can create as well. I don't do a lot of talk about the stock screens in this demo. I have another demo next Thursday at the exact same time. Sorry, next Wednesday at the exact same time as this one, where we talk about the stock screening, but basically it allows you to create a filter, okay? And you can actually create a notebook as well. So if you have ideas on things you want to do, then you can actually keep your notes in here and so forth, okay? Questions about the dashboard? Anybody? Oh yeah, one other thing. You can actually create stock lists, and you can actually filter stuff. So if you go to your stock lists down here, you can actually create, this is basically a watch list. So if I want to say, like, what's a technology company here? Tesla's kind of overused, but let me go ahead and add it. Tesla. I can add this to my list here, and I can add Snowflake here, which is a nice company. So Snowflake, add this to my list. Let me get my follow list, and I think if I get rid of Snowflake here, yes, let's delete it. So, okay, we'll get rid of, okay, we'll get rid of Zoom from here, and we'll add Zoom to my technology list. Okay, so now if I go over here to my overview, I've got everybody in my stock list here, or I can actually, and this is actually caching something. So let me just kind of hit refresh here and see where my new stock list is. Okay, so here's my follow list, my default follow list. If I put a ticker in here, it's going to be added to my default follow list. But if I want to go look at my technology watch list, then I can just do that. So you can kind of organize your stocks this way if you like. And then if you go out and if you go looking at a lot of companies and you go kind of to pages on Fintel, and I'll show you how to do that in a second, and we notice that you're looking at a company quite a bit, then we might prompt you to add a company to your dashboard for you. Obviously, you don't have to do that if you don't want to. Here's the search terms. If you want to go search for specific pages on Fintel, you can do this. A lot of people do this, short interest. So here's the search results here. GameStop, short interest. Let's go ahead and jump in there real quick because there's a lot of people that are interested in short interest these days. We have a lot of data here on short interest. One of the things that we get is we get short shares availability. When a company is being shorted, when you or a fund are trying to short a company, typically what happens is you have to borrow shares from the broker and then sell them immediately with the idea that you can buy them back at a lower price later on to return those borrowed shares to the broker. Well, we have a large brokerage company, a large institutional brokerage that publishes their short shares availability. And we track that every 30 minutes here. And so what you're seeing here is that this short shares availability, went down quite far in the last 9 hours, and then it's kind of jumped back up. So if you're interested in short squeezes, and a lot of people are, then this is an interesting way to see throughout the day, what's going on with the ability for people to short. Obviously, if there's few short shares availability, then that might indicate that there's a short squeeze that's impending, and so that's kind of the idea. There's also this idea of a short borrow rate. So whenever you borrow the shares from your broker, you have to pay an interest rate on that, and that's what this is. Higher interest rates indicate it's harder to finance these things, and it would also indicate that there's a lot of demand for those shares, and that means perhaps a higher likelihood of a short squeeze. We also have short volume ratio. So the short volume, every trade that is made, every sale that is made on the stock exchange is marked as a normal sale or a short sale, and we get the data from FINRA. FINRA does a collection, tracks this information at a couple of different reporting facilities in the stock markets, and they aggregate the data, and we get the daily short volume, and we publish that here. And we also divide it by the total volume to give you what we call the short volume ratio, which kind of will show you on an ongoing basis what's percentage of trades in any given day are short sale trades. We also can show you a ranking. So we rank these. So if you click here, you'll be able to see like the short volume ratios of these companies. Okay. Can you determine whether a short is an open or a closed position? I'm not sure what that means. A short sale is an open or a closed. Maybe you can restate your question there for us. I'll keep moving on down. Another way to short a company is it's a sale. So the trader, if somebody is selling, then it's just marked as a sale. So if I'm shorting a company, I'm borrowing shares, and then I'm going to sell it. So that would be I've opened a short position. Okay, these are all sales that they're marking. They're not tracking buys. Another way to track, another way to short a company is to open up is to buy put ratio, is to buy put options. And so, if you take the total number of institutions and you look at all the positions they have disclosed, you can divide the calls by the puts and get what's called the put call ratio. And so we track that on a daily basis. Obviously, companies with a high put call ratio are going to be more shorted than not. So that's what this is. And finally, we have the actual short interest down here. This short interest is published every twice a month on a specific schedule set by FINRA. And we take that short interest and we'll publish it here, and we can show you the change. And then we actually divide that by the float to give you the percent of float. And so this is a very important metric for a lot of people. So for NASDAQ, for the NYSE, we don't get float on a daily basis, but for NASDAQ listed companies, we do. And if you go look at like Tesla short interest, we actually have some additional information here that we can provide you. We actually will give you this short interest percentage of float on a daily basis because float is updated daily. So let me slide down here a little bit further. Here you can see we're publishing short interest percentage of float on a daily basis. Mostly it doesn't change, but here you can see it changed a couple days ago. The float went from 91 to 95, and so the short interest percentage of float went from 36 to 33. So the short interest changes, twice a month, but the float can change every day. Okay, so that's what you're seeing here. And then we also have the short interest described here on the settlement date. Any questions about this? Oh, we also have funds disclosing short positions. So a lot of ETFs and a lot of mutual funds have to disclose their short positions as well. And so we will go ahead and show you here the funds that are actually disclosing short positions and what those are. So you can see here a company, Diamond Hill Long Short Fund, used to have 57,000 shares short. Now they have 29,000 shares short. So they reduced their short position by 48%. HSBC Holdings, they have a large put on Tesla, and they've reduced that put by 17%. Okay, what are your sources of data other than IEX? Well, we've been moving towards NASDAQ and the NYSE really for data that we can get from them. So we're getting float from the NASDAQ now. We're getting short interest from NYSE and from NASDAQ, and that's kind of where we're moving towards when we can. So I don't know if that answers your question or not. A lot of data we can only get, well, I shouldn't say most of the data. The short interest data and that we get from NYSE and NASDAQ. IEX doesn't provide short interest data at all. We get the New York Stock Exchange float from IEX, and we're looking at trying to source that from other sources as well. Okay, so there's the discussion on short interest. We can talk about ownership data here. Let's take a look at ownership data. Oh, right here. So I can just kind of click over here and see the institutional owners. How are we doing on time? It's 9:37. Okay. I'm just going to keep chugging through this here and try to get to what I think is going to be important for you all. If you've been to Fintel a lot, you know that the ownership data is probably one of the things that we do best. We started on ownership data 5 years ago, and we've just continued to work on it over time. And we feel like we're probably one of the best suppliers of ownership data around. I'm just going to kind of slide down here through. Here's some kind of header information. We get the CEO and the information from the insider filings, and so we don't update this manually. It just comes from the Form 4s. So 13Ds and 13Gs. As I mentioned before, 13Ds and 13Gs are really designed for the government to track large owners of stocks. And so if somebody owns more than 5% of the company, then they're going to have to file a 13D or a 13G. My understanding of the difference between a 13D and a 13G is that a 13D, D as in Delta, is an activist filing, where if the person buying those shares intends on influencing management, either through like trying to seek a board seat or a proxy battle, or tries to do something like change the way that management is operating, then they're required to file a 13D as in Delta. if they're not interested in changing the way management is operating, then they would file a 13G as in golf. So you think about these guys that are like activist investors like Carl Icahn or these other companies. They're typically filing 13D as in Delta filings, and these guys, I'm not quite sure why Elon Musk is not filing a 13D since he is management, but that's another story. Presumably, all these other companies here are filing 13Gs are not interested in influencing management. They're not interested in board seats. They're not interested in proxies. They're just going to be silent partners in this company. Failed to deliver data. Do we have that? I think it's available, but we don't actually get it and provide it. But it's a good question, and I will look into that. I will look into it because you're the first person who's ever asked me that, and so I will look into it. We want to have a very comprehensive short interest picture of stuff. So failure delivery is probably something that we should look into. So I will make a note to look into that. You can see here in the 13Ds and 13Gs, basically they have to supply whether they own and how many shares do they have, and we just kind of do the math here for you and tell you if they're increasing or decreasing. And we show this kind of like as filed. Obviously, if you kind of dig into these, you'll probably find that Abu Dhabi National Energy hasn't filed something new recently. I'm not quite sure why they wouldn't, because they're supposed to file an update annually. So these are old filings. I'm not quite sure why they haven't updated in a while. Now we kind of get down into the real meat of things, which is basically the ownership data from 13F filings and from the NPORT filings. We show these on a as we received basis, so they're sorted as the filings were received. Listings here in green are basically new positions that we found, or at least reported new positions, and then obviously the ones that are not in green are white or gray. And so what this means is this is a disclosure of an option. So Draper Asset Management disclosed a call option here, 500 shares at $131,000 in value. So let's take a look at, for example, Norges Bank here. They disclosed 7 million shares. They disclosed a value of $5 billion because this is by 1,000. If you do the math on this, what we try to find out is the average share price of those shares over the quarter. We don't just divide value by the shares to come up with this information, because that would tell us the average share price at the end of the quarter. Okay, remember these 13F filings are filings as of the last day of the quarter. We want to know what the average share price was over the entire quarter. So we can't just take the data from the last day and do this math to come up with the average share price. A lot of people think we're doing this wrong when they don't understand exactly how we're doing it. If you click in here and you look at the history here, what we do is we take, the average share price. Looks like this person made a lot of mistakes here. So this is probably a terrible example. Let's go take a look at somebody else here who filed their filings on time, or maybe let's go down a little bit further here. Let's take a look at this guy. Let's take a look at this guy right here, Avitas Wealth Management. So here we have a situation where, in order to find the average share price, we take a look at the shares and the value on this quarter, the shares and the value on this quarter, and average those to get this average share price over the quarter. Okay, so that's how we do this calculation. So here's a good detail page. We calculate the allocation of this position over this fund's holdings. We calculate the cost basis by looking at the change in the shares, and we use that to calculate, and we use the average price to calculate the cost basis. So if somebody accumulated some shares, which in this case they did, we take the difference in the shares and multiply it by the average share price to find the cost basis. And then we subtract the cost basis from the value to find the total profit in that quarter and get their total return. So it's kind of a long, complicated calculation. These are obviously estimates because we're looking at data that is only provided to us at the end of the quarter, but it allows us at least an opportunity to try to kind of estimate what they're doing. So the question is does average share price reflect stock splits? And the answer is no. We do not do any stock split adjustments because we are providing data that is as reported by the fund. We don't want to go messing around we want this information, for example, shares and the value, to match exactly what is in the filings that they provide. And so we do not provide stock split adjusted information. When the quarter rolls and the fund supplies new information, then you'll see that reflected in that new data. Maybe we can get stock split dates for tickers that had a stock split. Yes, that's something that we can look into. You're right. Maybe we can find out how to highlight that and at least allow people to understand that there was a stock split. That's a good idea, and it would probably be very informative, especially for small companies that do stock splits, or I guess large companies too. Tesla did a stock split, so I guess it makes a difference for Tesla as well. Good idea. Okay, any questions so far about this? We've got 15 minutes left. Let's see if I can find some more interesting stuff that we can take a look at here. Yes, reverse splits, yes. So as I was saying to you previously, a lot of companies, can you go over insider trade impact graphs? Yeah, okay, let's do that. Let's go take a look at insider trades. It's interesting data. So we'll take a look at the insiders here. Let's go to the insider trades. And we look at the alerts page. Yes, we looked at the alerts page already once. We'll come back to that if we have enough time. I want to show you the insider data. So we have we take a look at insider metrics here, and one of the things that we do is we try to look at what insiders are doing on an aggregate basis in a company. And so, for example, what this shows you here is that in the last 90 days, we look 90 days back here. We've looked at when I started looking at these metrics, I started looking at various kind of look back periods. I looked at like 1 week, I looked at a month, I looked at 2 months and 6 months. 90 days seems to be the right look back period for to be able to provide consistent numbers while also still capturing the ability to move quickly. If I'm looking back 90 days and somebody today makes a big purchase, that 90-day look back period is going to move pretty significantly. But if I only look back at a week, sometimes, what happens is that there's no data at all for 90 days, and all of a sudden there's a sale, and so that the number gets really noisy. And so in order to kind of smooth out the data, we do a 90-day look back. So what this says to us about Tesla is that in the last 90 days, $223 million were sold in terms of insider dollar buying. Now, if you were to take the dollar, and this is net insider buying, so since it's a negative, it means it was selling. So if you take all of the dollar buying of all the companies and you rank them, which is what we do, what you'll find is that Tesla ranks in the bottom 0.38%. So it's 0 to 100. This is at 0.38. So it's at the very, very bottom of 18,000 companies. Okay, so that's a bad thing. It's a very negative thing, if you ask me. You can see here the actual sales here were pretty significant. This was an unplanned sale. We actually tracked planned and unplanned sales. So I'm not sure who that was or what that was. Let's take a look. Let's see here. I'm looking at the shares changed over here to see if I can figure out where that selling came into place. But it looks like it was a lot of Antonio Gracias selling. Here's a 97,000. Oh, that's exercise. So a lot of selling from Antonio Gracias and Kimball Musk. Okay, and a little bit of selling from Jerome Julian. Okay, so what does that say? It says that perhaps, I don't know. It could say a lot of things, but you can draw your own conclusions. Maybe they think that the price is overvalued and they want to be able to lighten a little bit. If you take a look at but dollar volume isn't the best indicator, because companies that have a high share price are going to have a higher dollar volume. Companies that have a low share price are going to have a lower dollar volume. So they're not really, it's not really fair to compare companies on a pure dollar buying volume. So the other way to look at things is to look at the number of insiders that are buying or selling. And so, if one person is buying or selling, then that's interesting. But if 8 people are buying or selling, that's really interesting. And so what we find here is that in the last 90 days, there were 8 insiders selling shares of Tesla. Now, considering that the insiders consist of the board of directors and the management team and 10% owners, 8 people selling is actually a pretty significant number. And if you look at the total, if you look at the comparison of other companies, then it's actually, again, ranks in the bottom 49% of the entire market. So again, another significant negative indicator. And then the final indicator that we have here, which I think is the one that's most interesting, is basically the percent of float that's bought by an insider. And so I say bought, but it's kind of net buying. Since this was negative, so what happened here is that in the last 90 days, this is actually 0.19% of the float was sold by the insiders, and that ranks out to be 4 out of 100, or 4.5 out of 100, which is also kind of a negative indicator. So overall, the insider metrics on Tesla would be pretty negative. Okay. In this scenario, if you go further down, this shows you the chart of the actual trades. If you go further down, one of the things that we look at is the track records. Okay, so if we're looking at specific insiders, here are insider purchases. So Elon Musk purchased on 2/14/220. He purchased 13,000 shares at a reported price of $767, $10 million. And what we do is we track the performance of that purchase over time, and we plot it. So in this case, the share price continued to climb for 195 days, and the price at that point in time was $2,200. And so if he had sold at that point in time, then he would have received a return of 191%. The idea being here is that, it's illegal for insiders to trade on material non-public information, but if they think the company is going to do well and they don't have anything specific to then they're allowed to buy and they're allowed to sell. And so what you find, and there's a lot of academic studies that show this, is that insiders tend to do really well when they're trading in their own companies. And if you sit down and look at specific insiders, you're going to find some that do better than others. And so what we're trying to do here is to try to really build kind of a leaderboard and figure out who's doing a good job. I think if you look at Blackberry here, I think I used this example before, Blackberry insider trades. Let me see what we have here, if this is the right one. Here's a great example here of a situation where these 2 people at Blackberry bought 10,000 shares on the open market. These were open market purchases on April 8th and April 3rd of 2020, and they paid $3.79 for those shares. And then 294 and 299 days later, the Blackberry share price reached $25. So you can see the chart over here. So we basically chart the performance of those 2 trades, and you can see how they kind of went along, flat for a long time and then rose up, and they made, each of them made a theoretical max return of 562% and 674%. So you can see the value here is that we're trying to find the performance of these trades. Likewise, you can see that people sold, and we track the theoretical loss avoidance of those trades that they made here. Okay, does that make sense? I'm not sure how to explain this any better, but we're really trying to find what is meant by days to max. So what we do is we track the share price, and we say, okay, we start here, and we follow the share price along, and then it went to its maximum right here. So probably after this date, it kind of fell back down a little bit. And so this is the days to the max was 290. Look at the bottom here, 94 days. Okay. How many days for them to get that return? Yes, that's right. And it's a theoretical return, right? So if they just held on to it, maybe the price came back down and even dropped, and they didn't retrieve that profit, but it's theoretical. But the point is we're trying to identify people who have an uncanny ability to track trends in their share prices in their companies. And at some point on my list of things to do, I'm going to build a leaderboard of people of perhaps the best trades ever, and I'm going to put together a leaderboard of people who consistently make great trades, and then we can all kind of follow them and kind of see what they do. That's a goal that we have. Yes, days to max. So there's a lot of really interesting stuff in here, and we're just kind of touching the surface of that. Okay, so it's 9:55. Look, let me just show you one other thing here before we jump off. We did ownership, we've done insiders, we've done short, and also just so you know, we've also got, are the alerts real time? Yes, the alerts are real time. Let's go back to the alerts. You'd asked about those. So we ping the SEC website every 60 seconds. Okay. And we get what we can find from them. Obviously, the filing requirements are an insider trade has to be filed 2 days later, so it's not like real time in the sense that we're not getting real time trading information, but we literally ping the SEC every 60 seconds. And so we try to turn these around as fast as we can. If I have this page open and I leave this page open in my browser, then you'll get a browser alert. Okay, and so you can kind of just set this going if you want. We send the email alerts, but a lot of people have said to us that they don't get their emails on time, whatever, and we don't have any control over the email system. We send them. A lot of people have asked about text alerts. Certainly something that we're looking into. My preference would be for people to use this page, but I can certainly look into text alerts as well. But basically, this allows you to take a look at the alert. You can click on it. It's real-time updating, so you don't have to hit reload every single time. It'll actually update in real time. Yes, okay, you're right. So you don't have to go away and you don't have to hit reload. This will update it in real time and alert you with a browser indicator. And then you can kind of come in here, take a look at this. We show you the chart, and then if you want to get more information, you can actually click in and see the actual page. Okay. So that's the idea here, and then it shows you the alert that actually fired this, and you can turn it on and off. So that's the alerts. I'll go back and look at text alerts. So it's something we've been looking at for a while. One last thing I want to show you guys. Let's take a look at AMC, and we'll look at the SEC filings. As I mentioned to you before, anytime a company has some material information that they think is important, then they have to file an 8K. And with that 8K, there are oftentimes press releases. So we don't get our press releases from the news wires. We get them from the SEC. And so if you take a look at these press releases, these all came out of as attachments to their 8Ks. And so here you have, in a nicely organized format here, all of the material, all of the things that the AMC management team has felt important enough to disclose to the SEC. Plus you have quarterly and annual reports. You can see what changed from one report to the other. Most of the time, you're going to find that these filings are kind of boilerplate, but we'll go through and mark for you what's changed in the 10K or 10Q, so you can see the numbers that have changed, and so forth. If you continue on down here, you know, you can see stuff like this. Like you can see that this is all new content here for this latest quarter. So when you're trying to figure out what's going on with the company, this ability to see what changed from one report to the other is really important. So you can see here that they added the cash compensation here. So why did they add this cash compensation? Well, did they change something in the compensation structure? Maybe. So anyway, I really recommend you guys dig into these things. And then if you go further down, you can see that we also have the ownership data here. We have prospectuses and registration statements. So here's a shelf offering of 50 million shares that they made. So, you know, they basically diluted significantly. And then here's some more press releases. And if you keep going further down, let's keep going. You see over here on the right, there's still a lot to go. Down here we have articles of incorporations and agreements and contracts. So here's all their equity incentive plans here. Special incentive stock unit awards, credit agreements that they have. If you guys are, you know, contract people, you can see some really interesting stuff down here that we've surfaced. And then even further down, you've got indentures. Anyway, so you get the idea. A lot of any way of showing current warrants outstanding in release dates. I don't know the answer to that. It's a good question. You know, you could do this. You could just perhaps just do a search for, if I go over to my filings and I do a search for chronological, I have this ability to do full text search on the filing. So warrants. In here somewhere might be a discussion about warrants in the filings. Here we go. Here's a mention of warrants here. Okay. But I don't know how to find warrants outstanding. Okay, so it's 10:01. We're out of time. I'm really glad you guys joined us. There's some really great questions here today. Really glad to have you. Look, I do this every month. I'm also online. So if you have a question, you just go down to that little question mark in the lower right-hand corner, and you can put a ticket in, and one of our customer service team members will respond, and that might be me if it's a complicated question. We spend a lot of time on this, on making this right and making it useful. And if you have any questions or any comments, you know, please let us know, and we'll do the best we can to answer them. Okay. I always have a lot of fun with this, and you know, thanks again for your questions, and I hope you enjoyed this as much as I did. Okay. Take care. And by the way, this will be on YouTube by the end of the day. If you don't know where our YouTube channel is, I think you can just do a search for YouTube and Fintel and webinar, and we will, you know, you'll see all of the old webinars up there. And I don't always cover the same stuff twice, but you know, a lot of times I do, so I just kind of poke through it. And if there's anything useful that you find in those old webinars, then I'm really glad. Okay. Thanks again for everything, and I'll see you again soon.